Okie dokie, here we go. So, yesterday you learned about food chains and food webs. Easy. Food chains are just linear. They are one single line. The grass goes into the grasshopper goes into the mouse into the snake into the hawk. That's it. We know those are unrealistic, so instead we use food webs. It's much better. Food webs are a bunch of food chains connected together. So in a food web, you might see a mouse eating a little bit of berries, maybe some twigs, maybe some insects, and maybe even some other animal-like things. So all of that's cool, but we kind of have to understand how energy flows, because remember, we are in ecology. We're worried about how do things interact together. How does one difference impact other organisms? So we're going to talk about energy pyramids. So every time you eat, you are obtaining energy. We kind of tricked you on that one quiz, remember, that we said one way you can obtain energy is by sleeping. That's not true. Sure, it recharges your battery, but getting energy only comes from eating. When you're starting to feel down or tired, you're taking an SOL test, and 4 hours later, immediately you're hungry. It's because you burned a lot of energy. Okay, so that energy is used to move, grow, reproduce, and carry out life activities. Everything you do requires energy. Even thinking to write down the word reproduce is using energy. Moving your hand is using energy. Breathing, beating your heart is using energy. Your insides are moving right now. It's moving food down into your intestine. It's turning it into poop. That's using energy. Y'all have gym class every other day. That's using a ton of energy. Your bodies, especially being 7th graders, you're growing faster than you're ever going to grow in your whole entire life, using energy. So you need a lot of it. When this happens, you create heat, which in 8th grade you're going to learn is another form of energy. So anything that gets hot is actually releasing energy. So light bulbs release energy. When you go exercise, you're releasing all sorts of energy, especially by heat. So that's why maybe your face gets red when you start to exercise. Or that's why your palms start to get sweaty. Your feet definitely get sweaty, your armpits. That's all heat. So that heat leaves your body, likely as sweat, and is released into the environment. So every time you're doing something, you are releasing heat one way or the other. And you might say, Miss Riddle, all I do is I just do like you and I eat Oreos. Great. That's awesome. But guess what? Your body still needs to turn on the oven, your inside oven, in order to break down those Oreos, crush it up, and eventually turn it into poop. Okay, so your body is constantly hot. Remember, we are endotherms. We stay at 98.6 degrees. Your body is constantly hot so that you can be burning those calories and your muscles can always be primed and ready to exercise. So energy pyramids, these things are going to show the amount of energy that moves from one feeding level to another. So you can see here, super easy. Producers, herbivores, carnivores, top predators. Another way to look at this is producers, first level consumers, second level consumers, third level consumers. We talked about that yesterday. Here's that sun. Remember I told you every food chain, every food web is going to start with the sun. So the sun goes into the producers, the autotrophs. That energy goes into the first level, second level, third level. Okay, now, think of a piece of pizza. Everyone got it? Pepperoni. So when you start eating, most likely you start with the pointed end. You go in for that first bite, it's perfect, it's triangular, it's cheesy, it's saucy, it's pepperoni-y, it's yummy. There you go. But when you look at that piece of pizza before it goes into your mouth, what do you have the most of? Do you have the most of that first yummy bite where that point is? Or do you have the most crust? You have the most crust. So that's what this arrow here is showing, energy. As the pyramid gets more and more narrow, you can see here it's getting more narrow, you are losing energy. So if we look at this, the producers are your crust. you have a ton of crust where your hand goes. That's where you hold it. As you get towards the tip, that very first bite of pizza, you have very little crust. Okay, think about it. There's not a lot of crust there. There's just that little flimsy layer that kind of bends when you go to flop it in your mouth. So same thing here. You have the most energy at the bottom of the pyramid where the producers are. Every time we jump up a level, we get less and less energy. So let's try and make this make a little bit more sense. So the most energy is available at the producer level on the pyramid. As energy moves up, each level has less energy available than the level below. That's what I was just saying. So the producers have the most energy because they're getting it directly from the sun. Let's think of it like money, okay? So there's a big company out there that makes money. That's all their job is to print, make, cut, do the money thing. And then someone comes in, sounds weird, and they buy money. They have to trade something for that money. Well, the money printing company still needs to make money in the sense of like they have to put it in the bank. So they're going to charge tax. Okay? Then that person that bought the money, well, now they're going to use it to pay off their employees. But they don't want to give all their money away. So they're going to pay their employees, but they're going to withhold some tax. Okay? So every time energy moves, a little bit of tax is going to be held. So each time less energy is available. So let's look at this picture. The pyramid is wider at the base and narrow at the top because we're showing the amount of energy. So in this picture, we're starting with 1,000 kilograms. Whoa, throw it back. 1,000 kilograms of energy. Notice here, as we move up, we lost a lot of energy actually because they had to charge tax. The plants couldn't get rid of all their energy. They had to keep some of it. So they charged 900 tax. They only passed on 100. Well, let's look here. So 100 kilograms. We're going to go on to our second level consumers. Well, ooh, a big tax again. The deer and the bunny rabbit kept 90 for tax. They only passed on 10. Okay, same thing here. 10 kilograms of energy. We're going to pass it on to the lion, our third level consumer. Ooh, big cut. We only passed on 1 kilogram. This wolf or coyote or fox, whatever it is, kept 9 kilograms for tax. So that's what's happening here. Every time we move up a level, we're keeping that tax money. So here's that. I mean, it's a perfect system. I didn't just make up those numbers. In general, only about 10% of the energy is passed from one level to another. So let's flip back here. So 1,000 down to 100. Well, the grass kept 900. We only passed on 100. Guess what? That's 10%. Then we passed on 10 out of 100. That's 10%. Then we only passed on 1 out of 10. That's 10%. So only 10% of the energy is passed from one level to another. 90% is lost as heat. 90% is lost as tax. So that heat is going to be sweat or panting. Maybe it's physical heat and like their belly's going to get a little red and hot, like because it's churning its food. Because of this, there's not enough energy to actually support top level consumers. So here's another good picture. We start with 1 million. We're only passing on 10%, so that leaves us with 100,000. Then we only pass on 10%. That leaves us with 10,000. Then we're only passing on 10%. That leaves us with 1,000. So, hint, it's the same thing when I tell you in your head right now, what's 7 times 10? Oh, my dryer's done, in case you hear that. What's 7 times 10? Super easy, 70. Now, if I was going to tell you, do the opposite. What's 7 divided by 10? You're just going to take a decimal away from it. So that's what's happening here. We have 6 zeros. Take 1 away. Now you have 5 zeros. When we pass on 10%, we have 5 zeros. Now we have 4 zeros. Okay, so you're just taking a number away. So let's address the second bullet point. Someone in period 5, I think it was 5, had asked me, well, isn't there like 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 level consumers? And I answered, no, there's not. And if you look over on the word wall where all those food chains are, you'll see I don't think we have any that are past 4th or 5th level consumer. And here's why. There's not enough energy to support big predators. There's not that many great white sharks. There's not that many big lions. There's not that many really large polar bears, because it takes a lot of energy to pass on to support them. Whereas, look at all the plants out there. The ground is covered in grass, and it's covered in trees, and the water is filled with algae, tons of plants. And then let's look at our first level consumers, fish. Guess what? There are a ton of fish, like a ton. We eat them all the time, and there's still a ton. But when you get up to a killer whale, there's not a lot of them, because there's not enough energy to support them. So because of this, there are less higher level consumers, 2nd and 3rd level, than there are producers. So the same thing here with the pizza crust. There's a lot of pizza crust down here. That's where your hand goes. And there's not a lot up here. So there are a ton of plants. And then we're looking at our 1st level consumers. There's a good bit of them. And then our 2nd level, there's less. And then our 3rd level, there's only 1. Because there's only 10%, 10%, there's only a little tiny bit of energy left by the time you get to that top level consumer. So you're going to work on a worksheet to understand this. I'm also going to link a video to this post. It's not required. I'm not grading it. It's not an ed puzzle, but it's a good video. So if you're stuck on this, I want you to watch that video. Okay, really pay attention to it. Ask questions. If you need help, come up to one of us. We will happily help you. This is a little bit of a tricky concept to understand, but really what I need you to understand is a couple things. 1, pizza's yummy. 2, 10% of energy is kept. The rest is tax. And then 3, there's a whole lot of plants, and there's not a lot of big nasty predators. Okay, so those are the 3 big things I need you to get out of today. So again, I'm going to link a video. If you want to watch it, if you feel you need to watch it, please do. If not, go on to Google Classroom or look at the front whiteboard to figure out where you need to go next.